Chapter 271, A Champion's Prize. Royal, we're about to receive our prize. Wake up. Gufei was naturally the most considerate among the members of Young Master's elite. Ignoring War Without Wounds who tried to stop him, he shook Royal God Call's shoulder to wake him up. Huh? What's going on? Royal God Call was still out of it. We're about to receive our prize, the Guild vs Guild tournament has just ended. Gufei informed him. Yay! Royal God Call perked up. Jumping to his feet, he cheered. All were beaming at him when Royal God Call's face visibly paled. The festive mood he was feeling was replaced with horror as he stuttered, Did I just miss the finals for the Guild vs Guild tournament? The other 5 men's expression also changed as they exchanged glances. Burying his face in his arms, only War Without Wounds was snickering at Royal God Call's misfortune. Royal God Call seemed to have currently lost his ability to form coherent words. We totally forgot about it. Brother Assist apologetically said. Sword Demon sighed deeply. You really should have kept it in mind. Gufei mildly chastised. Royal God Call had been participating in both tournaments all along, so it should have become second nature for him to head over to the main hall of guilds after the finals of the mercenary PvP tournament. Young Master Han objectively analyzed the matter. He hasn't competed for the last 3 days. Plus, the prospect of obtaining a prize probably made him forget about it. Finally, he needs to get better at holding his liquor. The rules state that a player who didn't participate in the finals won't receive a special prize, right? Sword Demon whispered to Brother Assist, afraid of triggering the Royal God Call by asking this aloud. Naturally. Why else would they arrange it to occur on a weekend? Brother Assist whispered back. Fear gripped Royal God Call as he stood still with his hands clenched. Gufei kicked War Without Wounds, whose shoulders were shaking from laughter. Since you remembered, why didn't you remind him of it? You're too much. War Without Wounds lifted his head in surprise before raising his hands solemnly. I swear to the heavens that I totally didn't remember about it. I'm nationally very glad that I didn't remember. Royal, I'm really happy for you. Fuck. All of them eyed this inconsiderate man disdainfully. Take a seat. Brother Assist tugged the petrified Royal God Call back to his seat. Sword Demon was at a loss. He happened to be sitting opposite of Royal God Call, and he was clearly not good at consoling others. Everybody, the prize allocation method is out. Brother Assist cried out. They excitedly read the system announcement. Even Royal God Call seemed to have regained a bit of his energy. The first to be announced was the mercenary PvP tournament prize allocation. 6 special rewards would be awarded for the 3rd place winner. The system would assign 3 out of the 6 items in accordance to the tabulated scores by directly depositing them into the dimensional pockets of the respective players. The remaining 3 prizes would be mailed over to the mailbox by the Hall of Mercenaries, and the group leader could retrieve and give them out freely. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. 8 special rewards would be given for the 2nd place winner, 4 would be assigned and the other 4 would be mailed. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. Finally, 10 special rewards would be given to the 1st place winner. 5 would be assigned and the other 5 would be mailed. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. The system publicly announced all this. Prizes were the most enticing aspect in games. The game officials specifically made it public to ignite their players' passion toward Parallel World, so why would they announce it in private and to only the players involved? The players in every endgame city were now aware of the prize allocation, with those in Yunjuan City showing the most reaction to it. Was there even a need to explain why? Every Yunjuan City player knew that Young Masters Elite, which had placed first in the mercenary PvP tournament, had 6 members. This meant that each member of the group would obtain 1 item each and 4 would receive another extra. No other city had such miraculous winners. Most winners were either level 5 or level 3 mercenary groups. They would have a minimum of 60 members at most, so splitting the prizes evenly was difficult even if they were at first place. Young Masters Elite absolutely lucked out in the prize allocation department. Fuck, this is awesome. War Without Wounds happily slapped the table. He tried high-fiving someone, but the one beside him was Gufei while opposite him was young Master Han. Both regarded him calmly, forcing War Without Wounds back to his seat. At this moment, the system announced the prizes for the Guild vs Guild tournament. Since its scale was larger than the Mercenary PvP tournament, it was largely seen as the highlight of Parallel Worlds event. The prizes provided for it was naturally far grander despite the prize distribution being a copy of the Mercenary PvP tournament's prize allocation. As expected, the allocation was indeed very similar. 30 special rewards would be given to the third place winner. 15 would be assigned and the other 15 would be mailed. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. 40 special rewards would be given to the second place winner. The item assignment was split evenly as well. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. Lastly, 50 special rewards would be given to the first place winner. The item assignment was split evenly as usual. Additional experience points and gold coins would be awarded individually. A guild quest would be awarded to the winning guild as well. The additional quest was something that the first place winner of the Mercenary PvP tournament was not given. Just as the players were about to discuss this difference, the system notified them that 15 minutes would be given for the guild members and mercenaries to tidy their dimensional pockets. Parallel World would not be responsible for any issues arising due to insufficient inventory slots, and players would be considered as voluntarily giving up their prizes if such issues occurred. The members of the affected guilds and mercenary groups burst into activity after this announcement was made. With how dimensional pockets worked in Parallel World, no matter how large the given item was, a player only needed to ensure that he or she had a free inventory slot to safely receive the prize. Most people naturally had a slot or two available. Some individuals fantasized about receiving all the prizes, so they hurriedly cleared out their inventories. This 15-minute duration gave everyone ample time to discuss and speculate about this. I've not caught wind of the system assigning prizes in accordance to our performance. Brother Assist expressed his surprise over this tidbit. I wonder what it will be based on. Kill points, perhaps? War Without Wounds eyed Gouffé with jealousy as he asked this. Logically speaking, that isn't possible. It's probably gonna be related to the skills used during the matches in consideration of each job class's specialty. Only mages would qualify for the big prizes if it were to be based off on kill points. After all, mages are the most likely to secure kills in large-scale fights like these, Brother Assist opined. Still, there's no way Miles would win all the prizes alone. War Without Wounds declared. There are 6 of us. Since 5 prizes are signed, I wonder who is that ultimate loser who won't get any item. Gouffé looked at young Master Han and Brother Assist when he said this. The loser would most likely be one of the two. The fights that young Master's elite had engaged in were always focused on guerrilla tactics. This meant that these two players barely had a chance to shine. It was unlikely that the system would be intelligent enough to include young Master Han's commanding ability or Brother Assist's information gathering in the score tabulation. The two men looked at each other. It was a really tense 15 minutes for everyone involved. Things were not too bad for young Master's elite since the prize that they earned was enough to go around them. As for those players in the other mercenary groups and guilds, they were fervently praying to Buddha and zealously burning incense to their ancestors in hopes of the system looking fondly on them and blessing them with items. Although some of these people knew that they had barely contributed in the tournaments, they still had every right to fantasize about receiving special rewards. At the exact end of 15 minutes, the system publicly announced about sending out the prizes to the respective players simultaneously. Whether the people who had just logged in understood the system's meaning or not, feelings of envy and excitement still propagated among the players that had heard the previous announcement, especially those who were not going to receive any prizes. The only information that had been withheld to the public was the names of the winners. Inside the room at Ray's bar, 5 players heard a dinging sound at the same time. None of them lost their composure when this happened. They did not anxiously check what they had received, either. Instead, they examined the other's expressions. War Without Wounds' expectant face utterly betrayed him to everyone. The other 5 burst into laughter as they pointed at him. Turns out you're the ultimate loser. What? War Without Wounds stood up abruptly. Has the prizes already been sent out? As the others nodded their heads, he moaned in dismay, fuck. Why am I the loser? Why must it be me? Brother Assist, the king of information, began analyzing this based on statistics and data. You didn't actually bag many kills throughout the tournament, Yeah, you are also lacking in terms time spent in the matches, death count, and so on. War Without Wounds was speechless when he heard this. Indeed, he barely had any kills throughout the tournament, and he often died first before everyone else in the group. Forget it. Since you didn't get an item, one of the 5 freely assigned items for this group shall be yours, young Master Han said. Doesn't that mean I won't have the chance to acquire it too? War Without Wounds asked. All of them looked at him and spat one word: shameless. Come, let's see what each of us got. The other 5 took out the item rewards from their dimensional pockets, whistling in awe in the process. The system sure is considerate. The prizes were given depending on our job classes. Brother Assist exclaimed. Young Master Han got a holy staff for priest, angelic deceit plus 10 intelligence plus 10 spirit plus 10 endurance plus 20% heal enhancement special skill, phantasmic life force. Instantly fills the target's HP to full, disappearing once the skill duration expires. Skill duration, 30 seconds. Skill cooldown, 2 minutes. As everyone looked at the staff, Brother Assist immediately said, "This skill is so sinister." He then showed off his item reward to everyone. Take a look at mine. Twilight Blade plus 10 strength plus 10 agility plus 10 endurance plus 20% attack enhancement plus 10% chance of inflicting the weaken effect. This. The others looked at Brother Assist. Did you advance your job class to a Dark Knight? Brother Assist nodded his head in confirmation, saying, "The high-level skills of a Holy Knight specialize in party ride buffing and such. I feel that our mercenary group doesn't really need that sort of skill. You should have just chosen whatever you wish to play with, no need to think about this group," young Master Han chastised. Well, the sight of you guys having fun killing made me somewhat envious. Brother Assist smiled. Assist has finally woken up. Gufei felt pleased. He had never truly understood where Brother Assist was finding the joy in playing Parallel World all this while. Brother Assist laughed as he glanced at Royal God Call. What did you get? The item rewards seemed to have failed to mitigate Royal God Call's sadness for missing the Guild vs Guild tournament, as he still had an awkward expression when he took the item out of his dimensional pocket. Suddenly, the room was illuminated by 2 bright lights. Everyone showed an astonished expression. What did you just take out? Royal God Call was equally shocked by the sudden glow. Did he miss a finer detail that made his equipment emit godly lights? As he was about to closely inspect the item, Sword Demon apologetically said, "Sorry about that. Wounds and I just leveled up." Oh, did they award the gold coins and EXP already? The others hurriedly checked their money pouches and experience point bars, realizing that they received quite an increase. Sword Demon and War Without Wounds accumulated a lot of experience points, so their experience point rewards allowed them to rise to level 41. Since the 6 men all received these rewards, they were not that surprised by them. All turned their gazes on the item Royal God Call had placed on the table. Point of Ephemera. Plus 10 agility. Plus strength. Plus 5 attack range. Plus 35% attack enhancement. Plus 10% chance of inflicting the pierce effect. This. Brother Assist, along with the rest, was silent for a moment before saying, "You can't really tell if it's better than Sniper's Scream or worse." Yup. Royal God Call could also not decide which was better between his 2 weapons. Sniper's Scream increased agility by 20 points, attack range by 10 points, and Fatal Blow by 15% with 30% snipe enhancement. While Point of Ephemera was the better choice in terms of basic attacks due to its 35% attack enhancement trait, Sniper's Scream could greatly enhance the attack power of Royal God Call's ultimate skill, Snipe. Just swap it when the need arrives. There's no such thing as perfect equipment, anyway, Brother Assist told Royal God Call after comparing the 2 items on the table. Royal God Call could only nod his head as their gazes shifted onto Sword Demon. "Fortunately, the prize I got isn't a weapon." Sword Demon expressed his relief as he took out something from his dimensional pocket. He already had the 2 overleveled daggers, Lasting Sentence and Dying Breath, which were also set equipment. The system would certainly give out items according to the current level 40 standard, so it would have been a waste if Sword Demon had gotten a weapon. Sword Demon placed a piece of bandana on the table, Yet it was different from the pieces of cloth Gufei and the rest used to cover their faces, as it had stats: Assassin's Bandana plus 10 agility plus 10 strength plus 10% defense enhancement plus 20% stealth enhancement. That name is so plain. Everyone exclaimed. Stealth enhancement. So stealth could be enhanced, huh? Royal God Call muttered. It's probably because no equipment has skill for detecting stealth yet, so there isn't an urgent need to enhance stealth at the moment. Sword Demon glanced over to Gufei. Although the latter told him that he did not depend on equipment or skill to detect stealth, Sword Demon could still not help but be curious if stealth enhancement would be effective against Gufei. It was Gufei's turn to show them what he got. Fishing out an item from his dimensional pocket, he casually dropped it on the table. It's this accessory. His item reward was a ring. Ring of Subdued Lightning plus 12% chance of triggering additional lightning attack plus 12% lightning resistance. Different types of equipment had different criteria to judge their grades. Accessories and similar items were different from weapons when it came to the amount of traits. Ring of Subdued Lightning, for instance, was purple tier equipment despite it only having 2 traits. The system judged the equipment's value rather differently from players because it never considered trait application. Take Gufei's Ring of Subdued Lightning as an example. While it giving such an item to the Lightning Mage, Gufei was apt. Its additional lightning attack trait was something the average mage would be unable to utilize. As for the lightning resistance trait, a majority of mages had chosen the job class with water affinity, so equipment related to the water affinity would be more valuable to them. Lightning affinity equipment was therefore not really in demand and highly valued. No matter how exceptional the traits were, top-grade equipment with useless traits was still considered as faux top-grade equipment. Parallel Worlds system did not distinguish between true top-grade and faux top-grade equipment like players did. The ring's 2 traits had high value, so the system evaluated it highly to the point that the AI considered it as the most fitting item reward for Gufei. From its perspective, this ring could even be valued higher than Sword Demon, Royal God Call and the others' item rewards. Fortunately, Gufei was a faux mage. If he were like the other mages, he would probably be cursing Parallel World for awarding him such an item right about now. No matter how the system or players judged the items they had received, everyone in Young Master's Elite unanimously agreed that Young Master Han's Holy Staff with a skill was the most outstanding item reward thus far. If the system had gifted the players based on the number of kills and ilk, the best equipment would have never fallen in the hands of Young Master Han. After all, Gufei had the best performance in the tournament out of them all. Everyone pondered on this issue for a long time. In the end, Brother Assist came up with a logical answer: I got it. Only Young Master has perfect attendance throughout the tournament. Perfect attendance? Everyone thought back to the first match of the Mercenary PvP tournament. On the first day of Parallel Worlds PvP event, the square by the Hall of Mercenaries had been thoroughly filled with players that only Young Master Han and Gufei had decisively participated in the first match against only one opponent. As for Gufei, he had missed a match when he had gotten waylaid by Cloud Herder Guild. Indeed, only Young Master Han had participated in all the matches of the Mercenary PvP tournament. Just like how not turning up for work was the biggest mistake one could make when working, the system also handed harsh punishment for players who failed to participate in all the PvP events matches. Although Young Master Han had not turned his group kill points, the system had still judged him as the role model of his mercenary group and had thus assigned him the greatest item reward. Hey, I'm truly wonderful, Young Master Han boasted. The others did not know what to say and could only blame themselves for letting this narcissistic person obtain the greatest prize out there. Alright, let's get the freely assigned prizes we've earned. War Without Wounds felt thoroughly envious as he watched everyone pull out top-grade equipment one after another and deemed it to be his turn to get an item reward. Chapter 272, A Champion's Prize, 2. The 6 men of Young Master's Elite left the room at Ray's bar together. Plenty of patrons outside were animatedly discussing about the end of Parallel Worlds PvP event. The highlight of these players' conversation was of course how envious they were of the 6 members of Young Master's Elite earning themselves 10 item rewards. The 6 men were naturally happy to hear the other players talk about them. Yet none of them showed this on their faces as they made their way through the crowd and out of the bar. The unassigned item rewards could only be retrieved from the mailbox outside the Hall of Mercenaries. Currently, The square by the Hall of Mercenaries was quite crowded due to the players of the Black Hand and Waterflower being present. Since the item rewards were unassigned, internal conflicts due to incorrect distribution of them could easily arise. Thus, all the members of the respective mercenary groups were present in the venue. By announcing the item rewards that they had gotten, all could openly discuss on who deserved which item. This was the guild and group leaders' way of appeasing everyone and preventing any fighting over the final decision. As for Young Masters Elite, only one of its members had yet to obtain an item reward from the system, so they were not anxious about the unassigned item rewards unlike the players of the other mercenary groups. When the Black Hands players spotted the 6 men, they felt rather helpless on how to act on their anger toward Young Masters Elite. Since they cleanly lost the finals to the 6 men, they would simply be sullying their good name and seem like sore losers if they retaliated so openly. It would be more appropriate to do something like that away from the public's watchful gazes, if they indeed wished to retaliate in that manner. The positive opinion of the public about the Black Hand would likely drop if its players openly challenged Young Masters Elite, yet they saw no harm in engaging in some cheeky banter with the 6 men. Brave Surge and Black Index Finger came forward at the same time to receive the 6 men who were approaching the mailbox. The priest monologue under the moon even accompanied Black Index Finger in greeting them. "Congratulations." Both leaders expressed. "Same to you." Young Master Han replied. Brave Surge was naturally pleased by his reply as his group indeed got 3rd place, allowing him to qualify for the special rewards. Black Index Finger, for his part, was not very pleased with Young Master Han's response as it sounded as if the latter was taunting him. Nevertheless, his face only showed a beaming countenance. Black Index Finger did not beat around the bush. Sweeping his gaze over to the rest of Young Masters Elite, he asked, "I wonder who slipped up in that final moment." "Motherfucker." Goofy cursed internally. Unfortunately, the sidelong glances of everyone in Young Masters Elite completely gave him away as the careless person who had cost his group its perfect victory. Black Index Finger felt absolutely mollified upon learning of this fact. In fact, all the Black Hands members cheered as if they had won 1st place when they learned of this. No more words were exchanged after this, as everyone had important business to attend to. The 2 mercenary groups took the item rewards from the mailbox and pitifully did their best to fairly distribute them. The 6 men of Young Masters Elite entered the Hall of Mercenaries to retrieve the 5 item rewards while talking with one another. Someone among them was still bound to not receive an item reward, so they had to do this as harmoniously as possible. Wounds did not get an item reward, so he should get one right now, Young Master Han said. As War Without Wounds gratefully lowered his head, the rest expressed their agreement to this. "Sure. Alright, that's it for you. Don't even think of asking for a second item." Young Master Han coldly remarked as War Without Wounds adopted a pleading expression. "Scram! You shameless bum." The rest of them reprimanded him. Young Master Han swept his gaze on the other 5 men before settling at Goofy. Miles contributed the most, yet the item reward he got was just a top grade ring. "I propose he get 1st pick." They were also in agreement to this amid War Without Wounds muttering of, "What about me? Don't I get to choose? Scram! You shameless bum." They scolded him once more. "We're already pitying you by gifting you an item, yet you dare us to choose?" Royal God eyed War Without Wounds contemptuously. War Without Wounds was aggrieved. He was the #1 warrior in many MMOs, yet he did not even have a foot to stand on in Young Masters Elite. Still, he agreed with Royal God's words and could only chalk everything up to bad luck for failing to get an item reward due to the system's way of tabulating the players' scores. If the unassigned items were to be distributed according to their individual contributions, the 3 nimble players who had done most of the killings should be given priority, while the remaining 2 items should be handed to the one that did the commanding and another that collected information. War Without Wounds had simply not done enough compared to the other 5. This would also be apparent from Sword Demon's recording of the contribution points of their mercenary group. War Without Wounds dared not comment further as he checked the 5 items Young Master Han had retrieved from the mailbox. Before anyone could properly look at the items, Young Master Han shoved an item to Goofy. "No picking. Take this and leave." "What?" Gufei felt confused over young Master Han's sudden change of mind as he received the item. It was a permanent skill scroll for lighting affinity, Palm of Thunder. Oh! Comprehension dawned on everyone. Only Gufei could use such an item, and it would virtually be useless for the other 5. This little episode made everyone realize that assigning the item rewards was a simple task. The 6 of them had different job classes, so they would just take the most appropriate items for them. Even Warrior Without Wounds felt anxious. He would have to accept any of the remaining 4 items if it happened to be suitable for a warrior, right? All were almost driven mad by young Master Han's unhurried announcement of the item's details. Though. Can't you goddamn be any faster? Everyone bellowed. Ha 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 ha. Young Master Han laughed heartily at the anxious expression of everyone. He is so evil, was what the other 5 were thinking to themselves. Young Master Han's hand sped up and pushed the remaining 4 items to 4 different people to finish the process. Turns out that discussing about this is unnecessary as it can easily be settled by giving the items to those who can use them, young Master Han languidly said. The other 5 men each received an item, meaning, young Master Han was the one that did not get an item reward this time around. This. Everyone felt a little awkward. Technically, young Master Han had contributed a lot to get them through the entire mercenary PvP tournament. Had it not been for him, young Master's elite might have been eliminated on their way to the finals. Given my flawless commanding skill, it would be too much if I were to take all the item rewards for myself. It just so happened that these 5 items are usable by your garbage job classes, young Master Han remarked. Garbage job classes. What the heck? The awkwardness that they were feeling toward young Master Han disappeared with his callous comment, and they just looked on their item rewards. Instead, the unassigned item rewards were thus smoothly divided among them based on their job classes, and there did not appear to be any item among the rewards similar to the photop grade ring that Gufei had gotten. The system was rather accommodating, after all. Having item rewards that were only ideal for certain job classes helped players avoid possible disputes. No matter how much a mage contributed to a fight, he or she would not be shameless enough to hold onto a priest skill scroll, right? Besides Gufei's Palm of Thunder, Sword Demon got himself a Thief Cape. Night Stalker's Cloak plus 10 agility, plus 10 strength, plus 10% chance of entering stealth even when under attack effect. HP will automatically recover while in stealth mode. Further assist got himself a permanent skill scroll called Spiteful Slash. It was a Dark Knight skill that dealt 1.5 times his basic attack upon use and had a chance of inflicting the wound status effect. War Without Wounds also got himself a permanent skill scroll called Frenzy. It was a berserker skill that caused the user to enter the frenzy state. The damage of attacks was amplified by 1.5 while in this state. However, defense dropped by 50% for 30 seconds. Only Royal God Call was in tears, as he once more got a bow. Fuck you, system. He cursed vehemently. He was about to throw the bow to the ground when everyone stopped him. Let's take a look first. Everyone consoled. Repeater bow plus 10 agility plus 10 strength plus 10% attack enhancement plus 30% attack speed plus 30% double shot enhancement. It's not bad. Each of the bows has its merits. Everyone mumbled a few words of comfort to Royal God Call. Royal, you can now hang 3 different bows on your back. With you using each based on the situation, you'll be like a professional archer. War Without Wounds roared with laughter. Out of all the 10 items their mercenary group had received, young Master Han's Angelic Deceit was still the most valuable. Although the usefulness of its skill was how people judged an item's value, the strange phantasmic life force skill would have to be tested on the field first to truly evaluate its worth. Similarly, War Without Wounds, Gufei, and Brother Assist each got a skill scroll that would need to be tested to judge the skill's worth. In comparison, the value of Sword Demon's Night Stalker's Cape was already obvious with its ability to recover HP while in stealth mode. Although it was not stated how much HP it could recover, that line of words alone was tempting enough. Despite all this, these experts felt rather disappointed with their haul. The others were hoping to obtain over-leveled equipment for themselves after seeing Gufei's Moonlit Nightfalls and Sword Demon's recently acquired Lasting Sentence Dying Breath. Evidently, the system was not generous enough to reward them with such top equipment. Gufei had to stay online until the end of the Guild vs Guild tournament just to wait for their prize released. This was far later than his usual log-off time, so Gufei immediately bade the others farewell once they exited the Hall of Mercenaries to go offline. Brother Assist and Warrior Without Wounds left together to test out their new skills, while Sword Demon headed to a grinding map to test his new cloak on monsters. Young Master Han glanced briefly at his dimensional pocket before heading toward the nearest tavern to replenish his fuel. Royal God Call stood on one spot for a while as he forlornly held onto his 3 bows. The forums that night were aglow with activities. Players from the various in-game cities discussed about the huge rewards that had been sent out for the event. Each of them was green with envy. The average player already had difficulties obtaining top-grade equipment, so not many of them would even think that an OP weapon like Moonlit Nightfalls existed. The officials capitalized on the PvP event's thrilling matches to advertise Parallel World everywhere. Players knew beforehand that they would be filmed and photographed in the tournaments for the game company's promotions, but the post-production team cleverly blurred the players' faces and replaced them with generic faces before broadcasting the short video clips. All the videos featured amazing players. This was especially true of the exceptional Mage hailing from Yunjuan City, which ranked high in terms of view counts. That black-clothed mage left many viewers breathless with how he utilized twin incineration using a sword. They even got goosebumps on their skin when they realized that the mage could still dish out high spell damage despite obviously concentrating his points to agility judging from his exquisite moves. Quite a lot of people questioned the footage's authenticity, thinking that the game company had intentionally created it for advertisement purposes. But this theory was soon debunked by players from Yunjuan City who vouched for the video's authenticity. The mage depicted was indeed the real deal, and that same person had reputedly reduced a thief by 8 levels, gaining himself the close combat mage moniker. So that mage is still as indomitable as before. Those who still remembered that incident during the open beta days were awestruck by this revelation. Chapter 273, The Grand Meeting of Yunjuan City's Mercenaries. Yi Xiaoyu was unhappy over the game company's use of Gufei's footage to promote Parallel World, but since this was under the marketing department's jurisdiction, which he was not in charge of, he did not have much say about the matter. Whereas Yi Xiaoyu felt uneasy over the video's tremendous popularity, which was evident from its high ranking, the marketing department employees were beside themselves with joy, treating the video's hype as them making the right choice as far as candidates went. Gufei's popularity essentially surged overnight, and many people outside Yunjuan City were now eagerly inquiring about him to those residing in Yunjuan City. Although the players in the city had nothing worthwhile to mention, that did not stop them from talking. This was even more so for those who felt it their responsibility to brag about Gufei just because they hailed from the same city as him. "Oh, you know that mage? Of course. We even shared a drink last night." "Really? What's his name?" "Oh, well, that's a little inconvenient to reveal." Most of the braggarts would feel stumped when this question was asked. Although the 1,000 miles drunk IGN was revealed, it was not to the point where the name was known throughout the streets. Nonetheless, due to the hype that the system had created, some players learned that they needed to brush up on their information regarding the mage before promoting his IGN. Besides this, the strength of the mercenary groups and guilds in various cities was reshuffled after Parallel World's PvP event. Take Yunjuan City as an example. Traversing 4C's smooth journey to the finals cemented their position as the #1 guild in the city. Beyond the rewards that the guild had received, the experience points its members had earned were a huge win for them. For instance, level 41 was no longer something only the 5 unyielding experts could attain. The guilds and mercenary groups that were in the tournament's top 3 spots had members that managed to ascend level 41 through the experience points that they had received. As for the original level 41 players, Drifting, Southern Lone Blade, Eternal Dominion, and Deep Waters remained where they were. This clearly showed the difference in experience points earned by each of the 5 unyielding experts. The top position across all job classes leaderboards had already been occupied by Svelte Dancer when she got to level 42 while the tournaments were still underway. Although she did not earn any reward from the mercenary PvP and guild vs guild tournaments, she still managed to stand at the peak, showing once more just how formidable a pay-to-win player could be. The debate about whether Carouse should be the #1 guild in Yunjuan City instead of traversing 4 seas was more or less settled by the experience points and 50 item rewards that traversing 4 seas got for coming first in the guild versus guild tournament. Armor Guild on second place and the First Light on third place also greatly profited from the rewards that they had received, were it not for them being level 4 guilds with a 250 member difference to Carouse. Both guilds might even surpass Carouse after such a wondrous haul. On the mercenary group's side, Young Masters Elite remained as a 6-man group. People found it inconceivable for it to be the top mercenary group despite Young Masters Elite ranking first in the mercenary PvP tournament. Still, people would now never judge the strength of a mercenary group based on its number of members. The advantage mercenary groups could obtain from being in different levels was simply insignificant. If even a 6-man group could defeat a 100-man group, then this simply meant that the difference between an 80-man mercenary group at level 4 and a 100-man mercenary group at level 5 was difficult to discern through numbers alone. Thus, the top position for mercenary group was still being fiercely competed over in Yunjuan City. With the identities of Young Masters Elite's members exposed, just hearing their IGNs could frighten anyone. When these 6 players logged on, they found countless invitations sent into their mailboxes. Besides Gufei, the other 5 were quickly reminded of their past glories. Although they turned a blind eye to these invites, they still felt a sense of contentment for being highly regarded by others. Gufei received more letters than the rest of them every day. His newly acquired celebrity status was of course generated by the popular video of his mercenary PvP tournament's performance. Gufei did not have the habit of checking the official forums, but once he heard about this matter from Brother Assist and the rest, he promptly checked the video, claiming loudly about how the footage was falsified. The reason for this stemmed from how the footage underwent heavy editing and only showed those instances where Gufei insta-killed his targets. His weaknesses, such as his low mana that required him to frequently consume fruit and the scenes where he had to awkwardly grind the enemy's HP, were summarily edited out in the final product. In short, Gufei's prowess was greatly magnified while his weaknesses were not even shown. Who would have expected the game company to be so considerate toward Gufei in this way? At any rate, many people now wish to meet Gufei after seeing the video. Even players beyond Yunjuan City's borders sent their regards to him. He could do nothing about all this and could only do what his fellow mercenaries did, thoroughly ignore the mails. However, in just a few days, Gufei's mailbox reached its limit of 1,000 letters. From then onward, Gufei would be greeted with a system message: "Your mailbox is full. Please read the letters as soon as possible." Instead of the usual, "You have a new mail. Please take note to read them," whenever he logged on. 1,000 letters. Gufei did not even dare to read through each of them. When he got online today, he promptly received young Master Han's message urging him to immediately head over to Ray's bar. Maybe his new business again, Gufei thought to himself as he rushed down the streets. Young Master Han had once bragged about their business booming once they made a name for their mercenary group through Parallel Worlds PvP event. True to his words, young Master Han no longer needed to specifically visit the Hall of Mercenaries to acquire missions as players came to him in droves to ask for help in their quests, allowing young Masters Elite to pick the missions they wished to complete and greatly improving the 6 members' days. When Gufei arrived at Ray's bar and pushed its door open, he was stunned by what he saw. Plenty of familiar faces were inside the bar, and they were all important figures in Yunjuan City. Fo Herder, who was sitting by a table beside the door, was the first person Gufei spotted. His face wore a complex expression. Walking in, he saw Carouse guild leader Brave Surge and his brothers in arms. When he neared their table, Brave Surge got up and exchanged pleasantries with him. Walking a bit further inside, he saw Black Index Finger, Drifting, and several other members of the Black Hand. Black Index Finger's face blanched when he also saw Gufei. Drifting, for his part, greeted Gufei warmly and asked him about the rewards he had gotten from the tournament. Gufei beamingly lifted his middle finger to him, causing Drifting to be momentarily stunned. Gufei quickly realized what he had unintentionally done and used his other hand to indicate the ring on his finger. "This item right here." Drifting immediately understood and chuckled, "That's the one. MHM. There's something else," 2. I'll show it to you when the opportunity arises, Gufei laughed. Leaving the table on that note and a few steps forward, he felt a tug on his sleeves. Gufei looked down and saw Sakura-Zakamuni, Fireball, and a few others of Forever in Flowers creepily huddling on the table. Fireball whispered to Gufei, drunk bro. So you guys are here, too. What's up? Gufei bent his body to speak to them. Help introduce us. The men shiftily pointed toward the table beside them. Gufei turned to look and saw Svelte Dancer, Luo, July, June's Rain. The whole table was occupied by the Amethyst Rebirth ladies. Gufei beamed at them. But before he could greet them, Svelte Dancer glared at him. When are you paying up? Gufei lowered his head in embarrassment. He hastily took a coin pouch from his dimensional pocket and tossed it over to her. Surprised, Svelte Dancer grabbed it from the air. However, she growled when she saw its meager content. Why is it only 300 gold coins? Didn't I say that I'll pay you back in installment? Gufei asked rhetorically. That sum was all he had managed to save from every match in the tournament, inclusive of the final prize money he received for his win and the coins he earned from doing missions. Introduce us. Sakura-Zakamuni and Fireball pleaded earnestly. Seeing how near they were to the girls, Gufei reckoned Sakura-Zakamuni and his gang must have done their best to occupy a table as close as possible to the ladies. Gufei felt helpless. He was just about to help fulfill their plea when Svelte Dancer spat out, "What are you sneakily muttering about with the skeevy wretches of Forever in Flowers?" Gufei turned to Sakura-Zakamuni and shrugged his shoulders. "I don't think there's a need for introduction, they clearly recognize you guys." The men were very elated. Although she called them skeevy wretches, they were still glad that these babes had a deep impression of them. "Didn't you say you only have eyes for the most outstanding tree in the forest?" Gufei asked Sakura-Zakamuni. Sakura-Zakamuni did not miss a beat as he cast a sidelong glance over to Fireball and his guildmates. "It's for them." Gufei chuckled. "What about you?" Sakura-Zakamuni shook his head forlornly. "Troublesome." "What?" Gufei asked, puzzled. Sakura-Zakamuni scratched his head and shared. "We originally came here together. But once we entered, she suddenly turned around and left." "Oh?" Gufei expressed his surprise. What he was surprised about was not Vastlushness's sudden departure but her willingness to mix with Sakura-Zakamuni and his lot. As for why she had left, Gufei quickly found the cause of it with a quick glance around the room. Silvermoon was staring at him with steely eyes, but when Gufei looked at him as well, he hurriedly averted his gaze. Silvermoon seemed as if he wanted to vanish from sight. Gufei was unfazed by this. Had he met him on the street, Gufei might have let Silvermoon have a taste of his sword. The veneer of politeness shared between young Masters Elite and Silvermoon had long since peeled off. Since Gufei felt that a monumental reason was behind this gathering of Yunjuan City's many prominent figures at Ray's bar, he settled himself with staring the man down as he walked toward the opposite direction. Young Master Han and the rest of Young Masters Elite were occupying a table in the lounge. The mere fact that the five were not sitting inside their usual room already hinted to something afoot. They had already reserved a seat for Gufei, teasing him the moment he sat down. "Hey, it sure is different when one is famous." Gufei was greeted by many players the moment he entered the bar. Be it in hatred or love, not one person present took his or her eyes off of him. "What's going on?" Gufei ignored their teasing and directly asked the question he had in mind. Since it was related to gathering information, Brother Assist was naturally the one who answered him. "Traversing Four Seas has invited everyone here today." "Everyone?" "Yup. All the top mercenary groups in Yunjuan City are here right now." "Oh." Gufei swept his gaze over. Indeed, every table had a prominent leader seated. While he did not recognize some of them, Gufei could tell from their aura that they were no average players. "What for?" Gufei asked. "Heard it has something to do with a quest Traversing Four Seas received for placing first in the Guild vs Guild tournament," Brother Assist replied. "Royal, don't you know anything about this?" Gufei asked Royal God Call. As Royal God Call shook his head, War Without Wounds said while patting his head, "Looks like you've already been ostracized." Chapter 274, Bodyguard Mission. Ray's bar was currently filled with Yunjuan City's top mercenary groups. While many mercenary groups had hidden their strengths before, The mercenary PvP tournament had essentially unearthed them. Whatever the outcome of the matches was, the hidden experts and unique specializations of the various mercenary groups were revealed throughout the tournament. Using the various mercenary groups here as examples, nothing was naturally needed to be said about young Master's Elite. As for Silver Moon, he was here due to his king's command. Any skill that could provide a party ride buff was considered valuable, especially since only higher level holy knights had access to such skills. Silver Moon's possession of one such skill qualified him as a man ahead of the curve, highly demanded by large guilds alike. The Amethyst mercenary group might not have much strength, yet the existence of the pay-to-win players felt dancer in their midst immediately qualified them for an invite. Gufei only found out now that Sakura Zakamuni and his mercenary group was named the Great Hunters for specializing in setting up traps. All sorts of mercenary groups that had specializations were invited by Traversing 4 Seas to raise bar without providing any reason. Given that none of Traversing 4 Seas had appeared yet, the people present were virtually in the dark for what this was all about. Fortunately, they did not have to wait too long. After more mercenary groups entered the bar, Oathless Sword, Youthful Reflection, and Gale Force finally arrived. As the winner of the Guild vs Guild tournament, Traversing 4 Seas was now undoubtedly the top guild of Yunjuan City. Guild leader Ruthless Sword was positively radiant as he swaggered into Ray's bar with an air befitting that of a champion. Foe Herder, Brave Surge, and several other mercenary group leaders were also guild leaders of their respective guilds, having been vying for the top spot ever since their guild's establishment. Now that Traversing 4 Seas officially occupied the top spot, Oathless Sword could not help but express this to those present. Haha. It's been a while, old Cloud. Surge, hope you've been well lately. Oathless Sword's showy greeting caused the people inside the bar to furrow their brows. They regarded pompous fellows like him in relative disdain and felt sorry for the whole of Yunjuan City that it had such a man leading the #1 guild. Oathless Sword continued greeting the other mercenaries present. His attitude became visibly subdued when talking with the Amethyst ladies, which made everyone present feel like throwing up. The best was usually saved for the last. Oathless Sword greeted everyone first before heading to the table young Master's Elite was occupying. He courteously and solemnly greeted each of them, including his guild member Royal God Call, something he had not done for any other groups. Gufei was actually the one he greeted last. Oathless Sword pulled Gufei's hand close to his as he addressed the latter with kind words. Youthful Reflection and Gale Force, who were beside Oathless Sword all this while, showed discomfort for his action. One appeared to be infuriated, while another seemed to be in shock. Finally, Oathless Sword emphatically said to Gufei, "I'm so pleased that you managed to call attention to our Yunjuan City." The people inside the bar could no longer stand it, and someone actually stood up and slapped the table to call him out for it. "Oathless, you motherfucker. Quickly tell us what's all this about and stop groveling there like a sycophant. Just look at yourself." Releasing Gufei's hand, Oathless Sword turned to address the person shouting at him, ha. Alright, let's get down to business. That woman is so straightforward. Who is she?" Gufei asked, shocked. Even if the bar had fewer patrons, her blunt words were still disrespectful, yet she just went ahead and said them without holding back. Brother Assis promptly offered information about her to Gufei. She's the leader of Rainbow Betwixt the Clouds mercenary group that placed fourth in the tournament, Guzio Shang. She's also the level 3 Colored Clouds Guild's leader. Before Svelte Dancer arrived in Yunjuan City, she's regarded as the strongest woman around. I heard Oathless Sword has been pursuing her for the longest time. Whoa. Oathless Sword's taste sure is unique. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call exclaimed in unison. Guzio Shang's looks were definitely above average, yet she was too much of a firebrand that anyone could mistake her for a man. She was different from June's Rain, though. June's Rain had not cared about her appearance back then, so her shabby equipment and gender-neutral voice had made Gufei mistake her for a man. After equipping the body-fitting armor she had acquired from Y City, no one mistook her again for a male player. As for Guzio Shang, the issue about her was her temperament. Although people knew that she was a woman, they still felt some resistance inside. Whoa, that lady is quite vulgar. However, her vulgar shout was what put a stop to Oathless Sword's ridiculousness. He walked over to the center of the bar and cleared his throat, The ladies and gentlemen present here are all skilled mercenaries of this city. I've summoned all of you here tonight to offer you to join hands with me for accomplishing a quest I have. The entire bar burst into activity once he said this. Since all those present were part of mercenary groups, they were naturally knowledgeable regarding the different quests Parallel World offered. Although most mercenary groups had dozens of players, not one of the current quests required more than 10 players to complete them. Since Traversing Four Seas had to hire mercenaries for this particular quest, it proved that the quest was not a regular type that players could complete on their own. As a guild with over 750 members at its disposal, was there even any issue that their numbers could not deal with? Hence, everyone was wondering about the difficulty of this system given quest for Traversing Four Seas to be forced to gather all the expert mercenaries in the city for assistance. Oathless Sword gave the people present enough time to digest this startling news and was sincerely enjoying their reactions. Once everyone calmed down, he continued, "This quest is the reward Traversing Four Seas got for winning the Guild vs Guild tournament. Actually, we think that this is a chain quest." Everyone broke into activity once more. They had thought up until now that the greatest form of a solo quest was a chain quest, whereas the harder form of a party quest was a competitive quest. Not one of them had heard of a guild quest possibly being a chain quest. The men of Young Masters Elite looked at Gouffet. While talks about chain quests had been circulating for so long, Gouffet could possibly be the only player who had managed to complete one thus far. This was not due to no one stumbling onto a chain quest but due to most players meeting with failure halfway through or reaching a point where they could not advance any further and could only put the chain quests on hold. So far, Gouffet was the only player the five knew who had completed a chain quest. Oathless Sword reveled in everyone's reaction once more before continuing. The quest itself is very simple. It is a Yabiawan mission. Yabiao? Everyone asked, shocked. It was jarring to hear a wuxia term being said in this Western style Vermo. It is exactly what it says, Oathless Sword said, explaining, players are tasked to protect the quest item until it reaches its destination. Based on the depicted route for the quest, people will pass through 5 different cities and the journey will take about tens of hours upward just from the walk alone. Since the quest requires escorting the item, we believe that plenty of ambushes and robbers are set along the way. Everyone more or less got the gist of the matter after hearing this, and someone promptly asked, if the difficulty is still unknown, why are you so sure that your guild's 750 players won't be enough to complete the quest? Also, what made you look for mercenaries? Oathless Sword solemnly replied to the person asking the question, because there's a special condition to this quest. Guild members only have one life throughout the quest. This means that once a player dies, the quest will be deemed as failed for him or her. Therefore, the player won't earn the quest reward. Just as everyone considered the finer details of this condition, Oathless Sword informed them of another quest condition. Plus, guild members are unable to change their character registration from their city of origin throughout the quest. I'm sure everyone understands what that means, right? Without waiting for them to answer, Oathless Sword explained, while my guild members can help out at the start of the journey even if they have to sacrifice themselves, once we are dozens or hours away from Yeonjuan City, there is just no way for the sacrificed members to assist us further when they revive back in the city. So that's why you decided to hire external help. Since we are not restricted by these quest conditions, we can register our characters in the nearest city even if we spend countless hours traveling, allowing us to revive and continue assisting you on the quest, someone coldly remarked. Oathless Sword replied, all of you present are experts. It is expected that none of you would easily die like our less skilled members. Still, you are absolutely correct. We need that particular advantage you guys possess that will allow all of you to continue assisting us throughout the journey even after dying. Thus, feel free to request the sort of remuneration you expect from this. We can discuss the payment for your losses during the expedition as well. Besides that, Oathless Sword intentionally paused for a dramatic effect before saying, the loots we would get along the way will be free for all. How's that? This particular caveat was indeed extremely generous. According to the custom when hiring mercenaries, any and all items acquired from monster drops or similar things would entirely belong to the employer. Even if prior arrangements were made, the eventual payout would at most be but a mere morsel. Oathless Sword's free-for-all offer would mean that any item dropped by the monster a person killed would belong to him or her. The present players were deep in thought, causing Razebar to descend into silence. Oathless Sword already had a victorious smile on his lips when he said, "That's the gist of the matter. Please feel free to think this through and send me a letter once you've made a decision. Don't hesitate to privately message me if there is anything you're unclear of or if you have any request. We'll take our leave now." Oathless Sword, Gale Force, and Youthful Reflection left Razebar, while the invited mercenaries remained inside the premise to ponder on the matter, to do or not to do. Chapter 275, A Thorough Fleecing. Oathless Sword entered Razebar haughtily and left it in a similar fashion. While it might have left a bad taste to everyone's mouth, he had also left behind a very enticing proposal. Putting aside traversing 4 seas set remuneration for this mission, if it was truly a chain quest, the items that would drop along the journey would surely be extraordinary, which was precisely what these experts were finding irresistible. No gamers worth their salt would be unmoved at the prospect of acquiring powerful equipment. Furthermore, rumors abounded in Parallel World that anyone who could complete a chain quest would instantly become an unparalleled expert of the highest order. It was essentially a God-given opportunity for them to be part of a chain quest. With such thoughts in mind, plenty of these mercenaries were already hurrying after Oathless Sword. Those that remained inside the bar were the ones who could not make up their minds and were still considering the matter thoroughly. The 6 members of Young Master's Elite were also scrutinizing the proposal together as well. "So what do we do?" Brother Assist asked. "I'm definitely doing this. Even if you guys aren't going, as a member of that guild, I am obligated to go." Royal Godcall resolutely expressed his stance on this. While he presented himself as a person loyal to his guild, he was actually an opportunist who acted according to the benefits he could get, and he simply would not pass up something that had a great chance of benefiting him. Gufei frowned. "The journey will take tens of hours upward, so how is that gonna work?" All of them knew that Gufei could not spend much time online daily. As the others expressed their disdain over this issue, Brother Assist said, "There's no way they can finish this quest in one go. Traversing 4 seas has to consider its members' schedule as well. They'll probably choose those players who are available, much like how they handled the tournament." "Miles, you have no issue if it's after 7 p.m., right?" "Oh, that's fine, I guess." Gufei sighed in relief. "I take it that Brother Assist is interested as well?" Young Master Han turned his gaze on him. "Hey." Brother Assist laughed dryly. "It's not often that I can participate in a chain quest. I'm sure I'll be able to gather plenty of data from this run." Young Master Han swept his gaze over to everyone on the table before saying, "Alright, it's time to express your interest in this." Those who aren't interested in doing this can buy his way out with a bottle of the most expensive liquor. "Damn, what's that for?" all expressed their derision. "If no one is buying me a bottle, then that means that we are all going," Young Master Han concluded. "That's so evil!" everyone exclaimed, yet none of them had an issue with this. Everyone was hesitating on whether to participate in the quest or not since there was not a clear reason for either decision, yet Young Master Han pretty much gave everyone an excuse to participate in it, albeit the reason was shamelessly damnable. This was when some Amethyst Rebirth ladies approached their table and asked Gufei, "Are you guys doing it?" "Yes." "And you?" Gufei asked in return. "Who's gonna help that maniac?" "You guys shouldn't do it either." Svelte Dancer harumphed, going as far as to decide for Young Master's Elite. "But I wanna do it." June's Rain was clearly upset. Understanding her passion for quests, Gufei sympathetically said, "No problem. Ziu can join us." "Can I?" June's Rain asked, her face brightening considerably. "I have no issues." Gufei looked at his fellow mercenaries when he nominated June's Rain as a temporary member. Young Master Han's expression immediately turned frigid, while War Without Wounds and Royal Godcall wholeheartedly supported his suggestion. Brother Assist, for his part, turned his face to the side and said, "I'm abstaining." Majority wins. "Done," Gufei called out. Although Young Master Han was the group leader, he did not even get a chance to voice his take on the matter. "That won't do." July saw Young Master Han's expression, and since she was not the sort to trouble anyone, she said to June's Rain, "It's best if I accompany you." "Yay!" June's Rain cheered. In that case, won't you need a priest? Luo asked. I love to fight. Lai boomed. Alright, let's head back and ask the others if they wish to go as well. July gestured for the ladies to leave. Stunned, Svelte Dancer chased after them. Hey, I'm going to if you're all going. Brother Assist looked at the departing ladies. He waited until they were out of earshot before saying, honestly speaking, I think Traversing Four Seas only invited them due to Svelte Dancer's presence in it. If Svelte Dancer won't go, I strongly doubt the rest will have a chance in this. The rest of them did not say a word. Gufei also comprehended this, so he invited June's Rain to join them. He knew that if Svelte Dancer refused to go, June's Rain would never be employed by Traversing Four Seas. In the blink of an eye, two mercenary groups came to a decision. Sakurazaka Muni, Fireball, and friends also came over to ask Gufei, what did those babes talk to you about? Oh, they were about to join the mission, Gufei replied. Sakurazaka Muni straightened his back as he waved his arm to his men. That settles it, then I'll look for Oathless Sword. Muni is too cool. His brothers applauded. You may have gotten yourself a girl, but you didn't forget to look out for your brothers. Now that's what we call a real brother. These reprehensible men left Ray's bar soon enough as well. After that, Black Index Finger, Drifting, and the others also left. Some came over to bid Gufei farewell, but none discussed the matter of joining the mission any further, leaving just a handful of tavern patrons. Royal Godcall got up and said, shall I head over and speak with Oathless Sword about this? Don't. Young Master Han gestured for him to sit once more. We can't raise our value if you take such a proactive approach. Don't worry. Oathless Sword may look very casual when he walked out of here, but he is actually the most anxious if no one turns up to help. Is that so? But he really looked like he couldn't care less. Royal Godcall insisted. Young Master Han chuckled. Several days have passed since they received this quest as a prize for winning the tournament. They must have attempted this mission but realized that it was impossible to complete it with the guild's current strength, leading them to look for mercenaries to help. They can't be foolish enough to expend gold coins for the mercenaries' assistance just from reading the quest description, right? They've already done it. Why don't I know about it, then? Royal Godcall asked, confused. Lil bro, you've clearly been ostracized. War Without Wounds patted Royal Godcall's head once more. That may not be true. As a guild member, isn't it supposed to show on your quest log? Young Master Han asked Royal Godcall. Nope. Royal Godcall shook his head. Young Master Han appeared to be deep in thought after this. What have you found out? Brother Assist asked. The wine today's a little sour, Young Master Han replied. Fuck. Everyone derided. Anyway, you guys can go about your businesses. Leave it to Assist and me to do negotiations with Oathless Sword, Young Master Han told the others. As expected, Oathless Sword had not let the cat out of the bag for no reason. Just the fact that they could not complete the guild quest by their merit was depressing. They could only turn to mercenaries for aid in the end. Why else would they be willing to fork out money otherwise? He had even purposely made it sound casual over by Ray's bar to cover up this truth and prevent people from making a quick buck by overcharging him. In the end, he was still easily seen through by Young Master Han and other similarly insightful players. Oathless Sword actually felt elated when people immediately chased him to express their interest just after he had left the bar. Their earnest attitude naturally made it easy for Traversing Four Seas to seize the upper hand in the ensuing price negotiations. However, he soon discovered that the players who had chased after him were not from any powerful mercenary groups. Oathless Sword was keener on getting those mercenaries that made it to the semifinals, yet not one of them came to them. Clearly, those mercenaries had seen through his cat and mouse ploy superscript 1. Oathless Sword could only show sincerity by privately messaging these leaders. The rumors about Guzia's and Oathless Sword's matter were true. Given their private dealings with one another, and despite her cursing Oathless Sword endlessly in Ray's bar, she did not make things difficult for him and easily agreed to lend him a hand. Brave Surge instantly rejected his offer. He had little involvement with Oathless Sword and he frankly did not plan to aid Traversing Four Seas in this matter since the guild was his Carouse Guild's fierce competitor in Yunjuan City. Oathless Sword should really be thankful that Brave Surge did not mess things up for them in secret after realizing that they had difficulties completing the chain quest. As for providing assistance, Why would he do that? Oathless Sword knew of this, yet he still extended an invitation to him. On the one hand he wanted to see how Brave Surge would react to this, but on the other hand he wanted to ward them off from trying to sabotage his plan by finding plenty of help for this quest and threatening the latter of incurring all those mercenary groups' wrath. Guild leader Brave Surge's reaction was in line with his status and personality. Phil Herder also refused to aid them. He felt very unhappy with traversing 4C's action today since his guild was a competitor for the top position as well. As such, Oathless Sword received quite a few rejections from these large guilds. However, it was the Black Hand and Young Masters Elite that had dealt him a truly devastating blow. They just so happened to be the two major targets of Oathless Sword this time around. The Black Hand was one of the largest mercenary group in Yunjuan City that was unaffiliated with any guild, while Young Masters Elite had members that were considered as top experts in a mercenary group or possibly in the whole of Yunjuan City. It was as if the two groups had colluded with one another, telling Oathless Sword of the possible danger in this mission, its long completion period, how the profits mostly depended on drops, the possibility of losses without gaining any benefits. Both claimed that it was bad business given the potential risks that their groups had to take on. While they sounded serious, Oathless Sword could read between the lines and tell that they were merely haggling for a better payout. Oathless Sword gritted his teeth and offered them a high payout. This made the two express their intention to give the matter further thought. Yet neither got back to him after thinking further. Despite his anger, Oathless Sword could only raise the already high price he had previously quoted before finally getting the two mercenary groups' agreement to join this expedition. Just you wait. We'll settle the score once this quest is completed. Oathless Sword resolved inside after suffering such a thorough fleecing. Chapter 276. Embark on an expedition. Traversing 4C's gathering of mercenaries finally ended. Except for those mercenary groups under the major guilds in Yunjuan City that did not wish to assist Traversing 4C's in its quest, everyone else agreed to give Traversing 4C's a hand. While some took this opportunity to fleece Traversing 4C's thoroughly, the average mercenary groups knew better than to go too hard on this. No one else reached the fleecing level of Young Masters Elite in the Black Hand. Those players that managed to make a quick buck from this were impressed. Traversing 4C's sure is rich. It's everyone's quest in the guild, so I'm sure they've collected funds for this. If each of their 750 players forked out 100 gold coins, they could collect a total of 75,000 gold coins. Brother Assist exclaimed. This was undoubtedly a hefty sum. Given the capital each member of Traversing 4C's had, it should not be difficult for everyone to provide 100 gold coins. The arrangement afterward was exactly as Brother Assist had said. There was no way anyone could play through the tens of hours needed for the quest in one go, so Traversing 4C's agreed to meet up with all the mercenaries over by the North Gate tomorrow. The goal that day was to trek through the Oolong mountain range and reach Y City before logging off and continuing the next leg the day after. By reaching a new city each day, the mission should be accomplished on the fifth day if everything went as planned. When Gufei got online that day, he headed straight toward the North Gate. Quite a crowd of people were gathered by the North Gate at 7 p.m., with Traversing 4C's and the hired mercenary groups making sure their members were all accounted for. Because Traversing 4C's almost recruited every mercenary group in Yunjuan City for this quest, a majority of the players in Yunjuan City caught wind of it and plenty of them came over just to watch the fanfare. The onlookers watched on enviously, pointing at several prominent players and chattering on. Look, that's Sword Demon. Do you know who he is? What do you mean you don't? Do you even play games, bro? Over there. That guy is Royal God Call. He's that archer. Stop lying. Isn't Royal God Call a mage? He had a change of job class. That lady over there is Felt Dancer. She's the top pay-to-win player in many MMOs and is currently ranked number 1 in Parallel World. Whoa, what a total hottie. Ah, that one there. That's the video mage. Look. Gufei's moniker had transitioned from Fugitive 27149, Close Combat Mage, Bounty Hunting Maniac to the latest one, Video Mage. Which one is he? Which one? That one with an apple stuck to his mouth. Ah, he's so dashing and outstanding. Overnight, having an apple stuck to a person's mouth became in vogue. Although the agreed upon time was 7 p.m., It was already 7:30 p.m. when all arrived and confirmed their attendance. Oathless Sword surveyed the gathered people before him and felt a great sense of accomplishment. No one knew where Youthful Reflection had gotten a wooden barrel, but he stood on it and yelled at the mob, "Everyone, please settle down." His words were drowned out in the sea of voices. Many people were actually trying to listen to him, but all they saw was his lips moving. "Settle down." Youthful Reflection typed on the guild channel what he had just shouted. At least 750 players before him became quiet, yet the remaining mercenaries and onlookers were more than enough to suppress his voice. Youthful Reflection got the help of the other Traversing Forces members to control the crowd and finally managed to have everyone settled down. Someone approached Youthful Reflection and passed him a rolled up piece of paper forming a makeshift megaphone. Youthful Reflection gazed appreciatively at the man as he brought the makeshift megaphone to his mouth. Hey, hey. He tested the volume first before beginning his speech. "Ladies and gentlemen, your mission this time is quite large in scale, so I'm hoping that everyone present will listen to my commands. TSK." Many people were already clicking their tongues before Youthful Reflection could even finish his speech. These people were from the various hired mercenary groups. Although the employers were the bosses of these hired mercenaries group during missions, the bosses would usually be the ones listening to their words. Rarely would they find employers that had abilities but lacked manpower, so mercenaries like them were used to taking command of the situations. The idea Youthful Reflection was currently proposing was exactly this, and although these mercenaries knew the importance of having a commander to rely on for such a large-scale operation, they nevertheless felt the need to express their displeasure regarding the proposal. Youthful Reflection waited for everyone to settle down before continuing. "Everyone, I'm not going to give out commands for your every move. I will only provide everyone my general plan before leaving it to the leaders of the various mercenary groups to command their men. I simply seek your cooperation." Someone asked aloud, "How are you going to do that when we are not from the same guild or organization? Are you planning to form a party? Who actually has such a high command value here?" It was insufficient to depend on a player's raw voice to command and coordinate many people for such activity. Therefore, it was necessary to utilize the system's conversation channels. Currently, there were just too many mercenary groups working together. Since they were from different mercenary groups, the two channels exclusively reserved for such large-scale commanding were off limits to them. While using the party channel was possible after forming a party, there were over 500 of them right now. Organizing such a party would require a party leader with a command value of over 50 points, which was simply impossible. A command value of 1 point in Parallel World would let a player form a 10-man party. Once it reached 9 points, the party size increased to 100. But the experience points required for leveling the command value would stop being given. According to the game officials, leveling command value would depend on a character's reputation. As for what reputation was, this particular stat on everyone's character window was still a question mark, as if it was locked. It was thus impossible for anyone to reach a command value of 10 points, much less 50 points. And yet, Youthful Reflection merely laughed at the person's question. "We don't need everyone to be in a party. I only require each mercenary group leader to form a party with me." Everyone immediately got what he meant. This man seemed to have planned everything out. He wished to act as the commander-in-chief of the crowd before him, issuing his commands to the mercenary group leaders who would then relay the orders to their men. It was simply overbearing. Although everyone thought so, none of them refuted the viability of this method. Therefore, all the mercenary leaders came over to join Youthful Reflection's party. Youthful Reflection was still standing atop the wooden barrel as he called out, "20 mercenary group." "Is the leader for 20 mercenary group here?" 5 men of Young Master's elite were wondering if Young Master Han would throw a fit in such a situation. It turned out that Young Master Han did not even care about this. Quietly heading over to party up with Youthful Reflection, he silently made his way back without a fuss. The only difference between him and the other leaders was that he was holding a bottle of liquor through all this while the others were holding the weapons, instead. Because of this episode, it was almost 8 p.m. when the preparation for the journey finished, and the players numbering over 1,000 set out under the onlookers' watchful gazes. A huge portion of the players in the expedition had never left Yunjuan City before, and this included the 3 core members of traversing 4 seas. But since the quest clearly outlined the route for them to follow, the 3 men took the lead with an air of noble arrogance. All sorts of emotions surged among the men setting out, some were excited, others were expectant, and the rest were uneasy. These men knew that they were going to act as escorts in a long road fraught with danger, so it was natural for them to feel nervous right now. After all, they did not know what sort of problems or opponents the system would send their way. The experts of Young Master's elite were somewhere within the pack. They were originally intending to keep to a low profile, but the Amethyst Rebirth ladies decided to walk with them due to being old friends with Gufei and being rather familiar with Royal God Call and War Without Wounds. Unfortunately for the 6 men, the Amethyst Rebirth ladies proved to be a crowd magnet. Besides the Sakurazaka Muni's skeevy group, a large number of male players kept on closing in on the ladies and engaging them in small talks to pass the time. At first glance, it would even seem as if the entire mob of players revolved around Amethyst Rebirth. This continued until they reached the Oolong mountain range. From here on it was a straight path toward my city. This was not a path Gufei and June's reign was unfamiliar with. Soon, they spotted a certain mountain that enlivened Royal God Call and War Without Wounds. They had something to talk about here, as it was the location where Young Master's elite had done their first mission, which was to eliminate the mountain bandit leader Sato in Oolong Cave. This was also where they had aided Gufei's escape when he had become fugitive 27,149. War Without Wounds and Royal God Call described Gufei as if he was a disowned dog that came to hide in the cave. Royal God Call emphasized that it was thanks to his realistic acting that they had managed to trap the team that Traversing 4 Seas had sent after Gufei in Oolong Cave's secret passageway. War Without Wounds, meanwhile, claimed credits for the conception of such an ingenious plan without batting an eyelid. Wow! Are you guys seriously saying all that? Even Brother Assist, who is usually uncaring to their antics, could not stand their bragging. Assist, I don't recall you being there at that time. Yup. He wasn't there at all. These 2 men worked in tandem and quickly eliminated Brother Assist's qualification as a witness. The ladies only giggled as they listened, each of them taking the 2's words with a pinch of salt. Evidently, they were used to Royal God Call and War Without Wounds bragging and way of exaggerating their exploits. Only Svelte Dancer, who was a late addition to the guild and did not know of the 2's personality, felt disdain for Gufei's embarrassing past. Are you 2 looking to die? Gufei threatened in his infuriation. It was fine if the 2 men only bragged and exaggerated about their prowess, but they had the habit of disparaging others as well. This was especially the case with Gufei, since he was someone who had managed to enter Amethyst Rebirth, which Royal God Call and War Without Wounds were still feeling bitter about. If they could describe Gufei like this when he was present, then what more when he was not around? Everyone, be careful. We may get ambushed here, Young Master Han suddenly warned. Who could it be? Don't tell me it's Sato? Royal God Call laughed. Just as he said this, a deafening roar came from the direction of Oolong Cave. Following this, a throng of mountain bandits came rushing toward them. Whoa! It might really be Brother Sato. Royal God Call and War Without Wounds yelped in unison. Chapter 277, the strategically positioned mountain pass. No matter how skilled the mercenaries were, they had never seen such a large-scale surprise attack. How many among them had experienced being attacked by such a dense pack of mountain bandits and robbers when grinding? Anyway, when they saw the mob of monsters surging toward them like an avalanche, they could only gasp in trepidation. The mountain path was not exactly wide, so it restricted the players from advancing forward in large numbers. The players that numbered over 1,000 were currently forming a long line, with Traversing 4 Seas at the very front and the mercenaries behind. However, while the sight of the large throng of mountain bandits and robbers blitzing right into their midst caused the mercenaries to gasp, the Traversing 4 Seas players did not seem to be affected at all. These players blocked the monsters' initial charge and uniformly retreated toward the mountain slope, instantly widening the area of the fight. Young Master Han lifted a bottle of liquor and took a swig. Look at how prepared they are. I knew they've done this before. But the formation. Brother Assist looked at the scene unfolding before him. The tide of monsters was truly staggering, yet their combat strength was not too threatening. The monsters in Oolong Cave were only at level 30 after all, whereas the large number of players present was at least at level 40 on average. After widening the battlefield with their tactical retreat to the side, the traversing 4Cs warriors positioned themselves to the front to tank the monsters' attacks, with their mages casting spells, and the archers uniformly firing off arrows in the exact way that they had done against Gouffé and Sveltdancer during the guild versus guild tournament. The corpses of the attacking monsters began to pile up quickly. From time to time, the monsters' corpses would expire, revealing all sorts of equipment, items, and coins scattered on the ground. Traversing 4Cs seems to have no problem dealing with these monsters after assuming that formation. They don't need our help at all, Brother Assist concluded. Young Master Han laughed derisively. They are really prepared this time around. They probably suffered quite a loss when they encountered this ambush for the first time. While these monsters are not exactly strong by themselves, they do have the strength in numbers and the element of surprise. It's only natural for traversing 4Cs to be at a loss on how to deal with them before. Defending against this sort of attack is easier now since they've made preparations for it. Traversing 4Cs did indeed have an easy time defending against this ambush by assuming a pocket formation that easily funneled the monsters with simple AI deep inside the pocket. The mages called forth fire as the archers' arrows fell like torrential rain. The monsters could not even put up a fight before dying from the enfilade of attacks. Strength through numbers, I say. The players, especially the mercenary groups with under 100 members, sighed in admiration. These mercenaries had never seen an assault made by players numbering in the hundreds and were naturally in awe of it. Once the monster's surprising yet weak ambush was thinned considerably, traversing 4Cs dispersed its pocket formation and the melee job classes rushed up the slope to counterattack. The mercenaries took this chance to participate in the fight, charging forward and joining the massacre. The surviving monsters looked severely wounded. The players were now the ones holding numerical superiority and gained up on the monsters, with up to 7 or 8 melee players surrounding the small fries as 4 or 5 archers fired off arrows to the leftover monsters. The mercenaries tried their best to steal kills while they kept their eyes open for monster drops. The system was truly impartial. Although the level 30 monsters' surprise attack was part of the chain quest, they only dropped equipment and items that were not of much use to level 40 players. Despite their poor quality, the number of monster drops was staggering. Many players that were grinding on the monsters nearby felt dumbfounded when they saw the unending trail of items. These players happened to be at level 30, so while the items were seen as trash by the level 40 players, they were treasure in their eyes. Seeing the high-level players' disinterest over picking the monster drops up, they could not help but salivate at the prospect of picking up the items themselves. This was when the level 40 players' miserliness reared its ugly head. While they would normally allow low-level players to pick up the random item drops at other times, they simply could not stand to let these lowbies take advantage of them and claim the whole mountain of items before their eyes right now. Uncomfortable with letting these level 30 players freely take the mini items, all the level 40 or so players began to pick the items up one by one without leaving even a piece of rag behind. They even smugly looked at the low-level players before taking their leave. The level 30 players were at a loss on how to react at this and wondered just what sin they had committed against the mini players for them to be glared at like that. The large group of players resumed their journey while traversing 4Cs did a quick head count of their men. Although they held the upper hand in that fight with the monsters, accidents, such as entering the pocket formation where death was certain, were unavoidable. Traversing 4Cs only lost about a dozen or so of its men in that fight, while the mercenary groups lost several men in the ensuing counterattack. There were already few monsters by that time, so it was slightly hard to imagine how those people got killed. Eventually, they concluded that those players' mountain bandit get-up had caused others to mistake them for the monsters. It was rather chaotic at that point, and everyone was fighting together for the first time. Such accidents occurring were possible due to their unfamiliarity with one another. The fight was surprising but manageable. Still, it served as a wake-up call to what they had signed themselves up for. The sight of the mob of monsters was frightening, but the fighting itself was made easy by the players' level advantage as well as Traversing 4C's readiness to employ the most appropriate PvP formation. Would it still be this easy if the system launched a surprise attack again in a different location and with higher level monsters? Traversing 4Cs must have realized the potential difficulties ahead after that fight, which explained why they had decided to hire helpers for the quest. Losing some men despite their knowledge of the ambush, it was really hard to say how Traversing 4Cs would have fared if that had really been a surprise attack. This was truly a serious matter, as the further they were from Yunjuan City, the less likely it was for them to be able to replenish their lost manpower. Mercenaries were good at thinking, so they were able to ponder on stuff related to the mission at hand while steadily walking onward. Soon, this throng of players began the long trek through the Oolong mountain range. This mountain road was unlike the one that they were on before, where the hill gently sloped. This one was literally a mountain pass, where they had a deep abyss one side and a cliff's rock face on the other. Leaving this path meant leaping off or backing themselves up against the wall. Either option would result in their deaths, which only served to show how dangerous this whole stretch was. The players' line was stretched thinner, as those who had never taken this road before did not dare to get too close to either side of the mountain pass. What if a sudden gust of wind blew them off the edge? Would it not be embarrassing if future talks about them were of how they had been blown off a cliff? It was better to just keep to the center of this mountain road on their way forward. Those with highly imaginative minds even began to think of what they would do if the system sprung an ambush on them in this location. Although the cliff's rock face did not seem to have any possible hiding location, the system had a flawed logic sometimes and could very possibly conjure monsters out of thin air. What could they do if the system suddenly chose to spawn a monster right beside themselves? What sort of logic could explain that? Did anyone even question this when that was precisely how monsters spawned in grinding maps? Such alarmist thinking was Brother Assist's strong suit. Worry was etched deeply on his face when he asked young Master Han, "Won't we all die if the system suddenly spawns many monsters on this mountain pass?" "That question is a little difficult for me right now," young Master Han evasively said, reasoning, "I'm drunk." "That's too illogical." June's Rain actually butted in. "How would the monsters appear here? Crawl their way out of the rocks or something?" She then brushed her hand across the rock face. It was as if she was searching for a gap for monsters to crawl out. "No need for that. The system only needs to spawn them." Brother Assist used spawning of monsters and grinding maps as the basis of his argument. Gufei was almost in tears. "Assist, you've really lost it if you are speaking logic to Ziu." June's Rain began to consider Brother Assist's words and the situation at hand. By the time she made the connection, Brother Assist had already forgotten speaking to her about the matter. "Hey, why are we not moving?" Their group's forward march came to a grinding halt, and players began asking the reason for it, but they very quickly quieted down. This was the good thing about MMOs, talking on a channel was possible. As such, anything peculiar happening to the troops in front would be known immediately to the troops behind. The question of these men behind was quickly answered by the ones in front. The pass got cut off. Cut off? What do you mean? Players like the men of Young Master's elite that had walked through this mountain pass before were baffled by this fact. Surprisingly, June's Rain came up with an explanation first. "Did the terrain change? What's all this dawdling for? Just when will we reach Y City at this rate?" Svelte Dancer yelled. She was originally from another city, so she had also walked through this mountain pass before. Svelte Dancer could barely stand the speed that this mass of players was moving at before, and now this already slow pace actually came to a complete halt. The people at the back did not know what it meant for the mountain pass to be cut off, but since it was hardly safe to squeeze to the front on this perilous mountain pass, they could only patiently wait for any sort of development ahead. The various mercenary group leaders sent youthful reflection inquiries regarding the matter, and he assured them that the issue would be resolved very quickly and requested for them to be patient. Indeed, everyone soon started to slowly lurch forward once more. As they continued their trek through the mountain pass, they heard exclamations of surprise from those ahead. Gufei and company finally understood what the exclamations were for when they got to the front themselves. The whole bunch of them gawked at what they saw. Damn! The terrain really did change. June's Rain felt elated when her assumption was proven right. About 3 meters of the road that lay before them seemed to have eroded away. A man-made bridge spanned over this gap at the moment. The bridge was made with 2 planks of lumber and was 3 meters long. The walkway it formed was simple and exhilarating. The players who saw it shook with fear. They all had ashen expression and dared not take one step onto the man-made bridge. TSK. What's so scary about this? Felt Dancer pouted. Getting onto the bridge, she quickly passed several players who were currently on the structure. Her careless walk across the bridge frightened the other players who were also on it. June's Rain was the next to get onto the bridge. This is such a fun mission. She excitedly leaned over and lifted a piece of the wooden board to examine it closely. The person in front of her felt his leg give way. Turning to look backward, he discovered that his other foot was stepping on thin air. He then caught sight of the endless abyss that lay beneath him. Upon discovering that there was no longer anything supporting his weight, the person's leg weakened and his body shook terribly. In the next instant, he dropped down screaming, "Ah!" Chapter 278, War Without Wounds. The person's scream traveled from the simple wooden bridge to the abyss below. Gouffet and company inclined their heads toward the shrill scream's direction in hopes of hearing the sound a heavy object made when it crashed onto a flat surface. People said that this sort of sound was very wondrous. Valleys, deep rivers, and lakes could produce such a sound. Naturally, using a human to make that sound was very cruel. In the end, all Gouffet and company could hear was the trembling voices of those players that had their backs leaning against the cliff's rock face. These players looked queasy as they mumbled, "No point in listening." Nothing to hear. Nothing to hear? Is it that deep? That man had been falling for quite some time now. His voice grew fainter and fainter until it finally vanished, yet the sound that they were yearning for never came. Is this mountain pass that high up? Gouffet mumbled. June's Rain was still holding on to the wooden board. When she saw that the person in front of her had disappeared, she could not help but be stunned. He was just here a minute ago. Why did he fall down? Is this bridge not sturdy enough? June's Rain took 2 stomps backward. Ah! A full-strength build warrior taking 2 stomps backward caused the entire bridge to sway slightly. Those players navigating across the bridge received the fright of their lives, and half of them quickly got down on all fours as they glared at June's Rain with rage-filled eyes. In their current situation, even a beauty would earn hate-filled glares from these men for doing such a thoughtless action. Unfortunately for them, June's Rain cared not for their hate-filled stares. And even if she somehow noticed their stares, she would never understand the reason behind them. Lowering her head, she muttered, "It's actually pretty sturdy." She continued taking long strides forward as the people behind her cried for mercy. "Oh, heroine, please put back that wooden bar you've picked up." It was unknown whether June's Rain had heard their plea or not, but the board remained wedged under her arm as she walked onward. The man trailing after her quickly retreated from the bridge. Plenty of the Amethyst Rebirth ladies by the bridge glanced at him. "Hey, surely there's no need for that? It's just one board, you can just stride over it." The man stared intently at June's Rain's back and said, "I think it's better to wait for that heroine to cross the bridge first." The Amethyst Rebirth ladies naturally understood June's Rain the best, and they too thought that her stomping about was really frightening. Their hearts could not help but tremble just from looking at the wooden bridge. After all, not all the ladies were as unrestrained as Svelte Dancer or as witless as June's Rain. Despite this, the entire Amethyst Rebirth was determined to not be cowed by this daunting task. Apparently, the gutless players already made up their minds to give up this mission. They would return to Yeonju on City once the others crossed the bridge. The lechers among them found it regrettable that not one lady from Traversing Four Seas or any other mercenary groups was in this bunch. The men of Young Master's elite were rather calm about this. Although Brother Assist was a certified worrywart, he was still someone who based everything from logic and evidence. Seeing that many men had successfully crossed the bridge, he was confident enough to cross it as well. Demonstrating the ladies' first chivalrous custom, Young Master's elite graciously allowed Amethyst Rebirth to go ahead before following after. Brother Assist was the first to step on the bridge. His footsteps were sure and his heart was firm as he crossed it. Sword Demon, Young Master Han, Gouffet, and Royal God Call followed behind. War Without Wounds, who was the last one among the group, tapped Royal God Call's back. "Hey, Royal, is this bridge sturdy?" What a nonsensical question. Royal Godcall remarked. Will it hold someone of my size? War Without Wounds asked. Royal Godcall blinked. Indeed, they had not seen anyone with War Without Wounds frame cross the bridge. Seeing War Without Wounds' hesitation, Royal Godcall was visibly elated. What? Are you scared? What are you saying? Why would I be scared? It's just that these wooden boards look a little thin, even somewhat brittle. War Without Wounds defended himself. Royal Godcall nodded his head. Perhaps, you should keep yourself as close to the surface as possible when you are crossing the bridge. Increase your contact to the surface for the pressure to be evenly distributed. I suggest you get down on all fours and crawl your way forward. Ha 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 ha. Royal Godcall walked forward once he said that. Bro, are you crossing? The player following War Without Wounds saw that he was hesitating and started pestering him to let him cross first. The Amethyst Rebirth ladies in front of him were currently looking at him. Their concerned look gave War Without Wounds the courage to cross the bridge. Of course, I'm crossing it. Why would I not cross it? With that, his leg stepped onto the wooden board. It was clear how different War Without Wounds was from the others just from that one step. As the wooden board visibly strained to support his weight. He could even feel himself sink ever so slightly, scaring War Without Wounds' very soul, and he reflexively retracted his foot. The player behind him eventually lost his patience. This man had been following War Without Wounds closely behind, so that one back step the latter took pushed the former back toward the other players behind him who were also waiting to cross the bridge. War Without Wounds was strong, but his strength was not stronger than the combination of the many people behind him. There was no retreat for him in the end, and the man behind shoved him forward. What are you doing? Get on with it already. War Without Wounds staggered from that shove. Cursing out, his feet finally landed on the bridge. The wooden board sagged under his weight, but it did not snap. This assured War Without Wounds, and he began to steadily walk forward. Goofy and the rest had already gotten off the other end of bridge. There were actually more people gathered at this part of the path. After expending so much effort to make his way across the bridge, he discovered that there was no space for him to land his feet on. Move. Why aren't you advancing forward? Come on. War Without Wounds felt danger lurking just below his feet. With him standing still, he felt the uneven surface was straining to support his weight. It was as if it would splinter at any given moment. Quickly give me some space to get off the bridge. War Without Wounds anxiously cried out. No space. There's really no space left. Royal Godcall was the last person to get off the bridge and he was occupying the last remaining spot of land for anyone getting off it. The entire mountain pass was already filled with players, and War Without Wounds knew that he could not force his way in. This was not a bus. He knew that he could snatch a spot if he forced his way in, but he was also certain that quite a few people would fall off the edge as a result of his action. War Without Wounds was not inconsiderate enough to do that. Why aren't you guys moving forward, then? War Without Wounds asked, feeling flustered. Young Master Han looked him in the eyes and said, there's another part of the path ahead that has corroded. They're currently building a bridge for that. They'll have to cross that bridge one by one once more, and that's why we have slowed down. Oathless Sword and the other two core members of Traversing Four Seas were currently at the very front, so they were the first to know what was happening. Youthful Reflection relayed this information to the mercenary group leaders who then informed their members accordingly. Young Master Han was obviously not the responsible type. When he learned of this information, he did not relay it to his fellow mercenaries. None of the other players behind War Without Wounds asked a word about this stall, clearly showing that their mercenary leaders had informed them of the situation. Damn. So unlucky. Why must it be me that has trouble finding a spot to squeeze in? War Without Wounds was seething. He could feel the board under him sink deeper with every passing second. Ha ha. Stand firmly. If all else fails, you can still get down on all fours. Royal Godcall ridiculed War Without Wounds aloud. The Amethyst Rebirth ladies were just in front of young Master's elite's men, so they heard their conversation. Each of them appreciated the anxiety on War Without Wounds' face as they stifled their laughter. This was unbearable to War Without Wounds, so despite the fear he was feeling, he could only project a courageous front to the ladies. He glared disdainfully at Royal Godcall. HMPH. I'm standing perfectly firm. In fact, using 2 legs is overdoing it. I think just 1 foot is enough. Although War Without Wounds said that, He was not about to demonstrate it. It was only a passing thought, yet he subconsciously lifted his leg off the board as he spoke. No one noticed his seemingly innocuous move, but things took a turn for the worse because of it. War Without Wound's worry was actually logical. Indeed, the wooden board could barely hold him up, especially when he lifted his one foot like that. The board happened to be the last piece people stepped on before getting off the bridge. After their unnerving journey across the 3-meter-long bridge, these people felt somewhat emotional with that last step, so many of them happily stomped on it. Thus, this final wooden board suffered quite the abuse, far beyond any other board that was forming up the entire bridge. It would have been fine if War Without Wounds had stood on it with his 2 feet. Once he lifted his leg when he subconsciously thought of doing so, the final piece of wooden board already had enough and broke. Crack! The sound everyone was worriedly expecting finally echoed about. As War Without Wounds cried out in surprise, he could feel himself sinking down with the broken board. It was a really close call. War Without Wounds spread his arms and hooked them onto the 2 long planks of lumber on both sides. While the 2 planks were sturdy enough to bear War Without Wounds' weight, his action caused a far more severe chain reaction than June's reins. The terror-filled screams from behind him easily drowned War Without Wounds' cry, as each of them fell onto the abyss below. Many of these players were still clutching onto the little wooden boards that they instinctively reached for when everything gave way, failing to grab a hold of the long planks like War Without Wounds. It was truly embarrassing to watch them fall to their death while hugging the planks so close to their chest. Every player on the bridge succumbed to gravity with the disappearance of several wooden boards. No one else seemed to be able to cross the bridge after. The players standing on both sides of the now broken bridge gawked. Eventually, someone lamented, "What a horrendous sin." All the players sighed. Suddenly, someone from the opposite side pointed, "Look, there's a survivor." The people on the other side did not know that War Without Wounds had caused the tragedy, so they happily applauded his lucky escape from death. Brother Assist shook his head. This is what it truly means to commit a sin. Chapter 279, Single Rope Bridge. War Without Wounds was hanging between 2 wooden planks like a sausage, but his weight prevented him from swinging with the breeze. Since he was busy trying to escape death, he failed to notice that all the men with him on the bridge had fallen down the abyss as a result of his action. "Hold on tight, Wounds." Royal Godcall knelt down before him, grinning from ear to ear. War Without Wounds severely gripped the wooden planks as he growled through gritted teeth, "Quickly pull me up. There's no space," Royal Godcall said as he looked to his left and right. Indeed, there was no reason for space to suddenly free up on this mountain path just because a dire situation had erupted, so the players remained as packed as ever. And while squeezing in a man or 2 would be fine, none dared to do so for fear of causing further problems to develop. As such, War Without Wounds could only hang in there precariously while everyone gawked at him like he was a piece of exhibit. Some even started placing bets on how long he could last hanging like so. "How long do you think he can hold on for?" 5 minutes. "I'll bet for 5 minutes. 6 minutes for me." 7. Taking in bets now. All bets are final. The adorable players were always able to find enjoyment in the game no matter what happened. War Without Wounds was tougher than what was presumed, however. 10 minutes had passed, yet he was still hanging on without trouble. It even looked as if War Without Wounds would have no problems holding on for another hour or so. Strength was not what mattered in situations like this but resilience. Parallel Worlds' projection of the resilience stat was rather mystifying, as players received aid from various avenues of the game system for this particular stat. Thankfully, the reality was not so cruel, and after a dozen or so minutes, the crowd over by Royal Godcall's side began to ease up, allowing the players nearby to pull War Without Wounds up on solid land. Those that did not have the strength, including Goofy, did not dare land, knowing that they would likely end up getting pulled down by War Without Wounds. Instead, through the concerted effort of June's Reign and another warrior, War Without Wounds finally managed to escape death. War Without Wounds was very depressed. It was already embarrassing to be hanging like that, and he had to somehow be saved by a lady as well. How was going to face the world from here on? Players on both sides of the mountain pass cheered when War Without Wounds got saved. It was then that the players began to ask another question: how were the remaining half of the mercenaries still stuck on the other side of the mountain pass going to cross now that the bridge was destroyed? Before everyone could think further on this, Several players emerged from Gouffet and company's side, sized up the situation, and communicated with those on the other side of the mountain path. Both sides ensured that long wooden planks were properly placed and began building another bridge. Are they from traversing four seas? Everyone wondered. Young Master Han nodded his head. Youthful reflection had already told the mercenary leaders about this. Traversing four seas came prepared, young Master Han told those people around him, adding, last time, this is where they could not continue onward when they attempted the mission. They hired many mercenary groups this time and brought this set up to pass through this eroded mountain path. They made these themselves? Everyone looked at the Traversing Four Seas members who were bringing out wooden boards to lay on top of the wooden planks. Yeah, it sure isn't simple. Young Master Han sighed. Parallel World did not have a carpentry crafting profession, so it was unknown how Traversing Four Seas had managed to create the wooden boards necessary in the first place. The construction of a new bridge was very quickly finished. Learning their lesson from the previous bridge, the players were very careful when it was their turn to cross it. No one pretended to be bold this time around, patiently waiting for their turn as they gingerly made their way across. Meanwhile, Gouffet and company followed the crowd that was slowly advancing on the path. They soon got to the second bridge, with everyone crossing it one by one just like last time. When it was War Without Wound's turn, countless players sincerely requested, "Bro, can you be the last one to cross?" War Without Wounds nodded his head even as tears streamed down his face. He squatted by a corner and waited for everyone to cross the bridge. On the other side of the bridge, Gouffet and the rest of their party waited for him to cross. In the end, War Without Wounds did not have to cross the bridge last, as a player of Traversing Four Seas indicated for him to go ahead first. Thankfully, the perilous situation before did not repeat itself. After War Without Wounds successfully crossed the bridge, the last member of Traversing Four Seas pried off each piece of the wooden boards from the bridge while making his way over. Finally, he stuffed the two long wooden planks into his dimensional pocket as if he were performing a magic trick, which left everyone watching amazed. The throng of players then continued to advance slowly. They crossed four crevasses before their forward advance was once more halted for a long while. The mercenary leaders informed their members of the reason for the hold-up. The crevasse this time was wider than before and Traversing Four Seas was currently trying to find a solution since the planks that they had prepared were not long enough to bridge the gap. Eventually, the Traversing Four Seas player who was in charge of keeping the bridge construction materials approached young Master's Elite and addressed Gouffet, "Miles bro, our guild leader wishes to invite you to the front for a while." "Why me?" Gouffet asked, puzzled. Young Master Han revealed elation as he patted Gouffet's shoulder. "Let's go. I'll accompany you over. Our guild leader said that only you are capable of crossing the crevasse without using a bridge," the player supplied. Gouffet nodded his head in understanding. Although he had been using the man-made bridges just like everyone else, he could actually choose not to do so by teleporting himself through the crevasses. It was not just him, either. The first crevasse that they came across was only 3 meters wide, and anyone who did long jump could cover that distance. However, the psychological barrier created upon seeing the deep abyss was not something any person could easily overcome. Together with the Traversing Four Seas player and young Master Han, Gouffet made his way to the very front of the regiment like a prophesied savior. The crevasse looming before him looked to be about 7 or 8 meters wide, and the mist pervading this gap somewhat obscured the mountain path ahead. Oathless Sword, Youthful Reflection, and Gale Force, the Traversing Four Seas 3 core members, were squatting ahead with miserable expression on their faces. Once they spotted Gouffet, they promptly got up and met him. "The wooden planks are not long enough. We didn't expect that there would be such a wide gutter here," Oathless Sword said directly. Plenty of players had begun calling this particular crevasse a gutter to alleviate the fear in their hearts by making it sound less scary. Gouffet asked, "What's the plan, then?" "We're gonna use ropes," Oathless Sword answered. "So you want me to secure the rope on the other side for everyone to cross using it?" Gouffet asked. "That's right." Oathless Sword nodded his head. Gouffet stood by the edge of the crevasse, swept his gaze around, and smiled. "Aren't you guys afraid of suspending from it?" Oathless Sword sighed. "Many of us are naturally afraid. But we don't have a choice." "Can Miles bro cross this gutter?" "I think so." Gouffet nodded his head. "I will have to trouble you, then, Oathless Sword said. Get everyone to make some space for me. Gufei said. Eh? Oathless Sword was nonplussed. It's too wide, so blink won't be enough to get me to the other side. I'll need to jump to extend my range, Gufei explained. Once more, Oathless Sword was stunned before flicking a thumbs up. Miles Bro is truly a bold man. The players around were from traversing 4 seas, so Oathless Sword easily got them to free up space for Gufei. Gufei backed several meters away from the edge and rubbed his palms together. Young Master Han approached Oathless Sword at this moment, rubbing his palms as well. Boss Oathless, I believe this can be considered as a unique contribution that falls under the terms of the contract we have previously agreed on. Oathless Sword helplessly nodded his head. I'll note it down. Hey. Young Master Han folded his arms, stood by the side, and nudged his head toward Gufei. Go on, then. Naturally. Gufei was already in position. Unhesitatingly sprinting toward the cliff edge, he launched himself forward and cleared almost half of the crevasse. Halfway through his flight, he finished his incantation, disappearing and reappearing by the opposite end. His legs were firmly planted to the ground. Thunderous applause resounded. Everyone was not applauding Gufei's flawless execution of the blink skill but his courageous leap to the crevasse. Not many were brave enough to leap into certain death with an abyss looming below like him even if they had access to blink. Yet Gufei merely exchanged a few words with Oathless Sword, and in the next moment, he was casually leaping over the crevasse while casting a spell. Rope. Gufei shouted from the other side. Oathless Sword took out a huge axe, tied a knot to its handle, revved up, and hurled the axe toward Gufei. Gufei did not reach out to grab it, instead, he waited for the huge axe to plant itself right into the ground. The mountain path on Gufei's end barely had anything to tether the rope with. Oathless Sword's plan was to tie either ends of the rope to the axe's pommel before hammering the axe firmly into the ground. Naturally, it was hardly safe for only one set to be driven into the ground. Oathless Sword reached his hand out and his underlings handed over 3 more huge axes to him. The generic axes were the sort used for manual labor. A majority of the players were at level 40, after all, so collecting inferior axes was not particularly easy. Once that was done, someone else threw a hammer over to Gufei. The latter then busied himself with firmly securing the axes to the ground. He had low strength, so this work was accomplished at a slow pace. Meanwhile, Oathless Sword and several other warriors worked on their end and easily managed to drive 5 huge axes to the ground, with the rope firmly winding around their handles. Gufei was still busy on his end. He hammered far more than anyone else, yet his efficiency was still far lower in comparison. The handles of the axes were not sharp, so they were unable to firmly lodge themselves into the ground. While hammering them into the ground was easy at the start, Gufei had to put more effort into his hammering the deeper the axes went into the earth. Gufei worked on them for a long time before finally securing the 4 axes and their pommels into the ground. When that task was accomplished, he tied the rope around their handles as everyone anxiously looked on. Miles Bro, put your back into it. Wind the rope a few more times to make it secure. Oathless Sword hollered. Tie a dead knot. Young Master Han reminded. Eventually, a single rope bridge could be seen stretching across the crevasse. Who's gonna go first? The people on the other side looked at one another, with not one volunteer in sight. I'll do it. As the guild leader, Oathless Sword showed off his bravery by volunteering to test the single rope bridge's sturdiness. Dusting his hands off, he grabbed onto the rope and leapt down. Just like how Warrior Without Wounds had managed to last holding onto the wooden planks previously, strength was truly not what these players needed in situations like this but rather resilience to hold on. Thus, this was not a particularly difficult task for the players in the game. Oathless Sword tightly held onto the rope with his 2 hands as he wormed his way across. It turned out that the climb back up onto the ledge was what required a lot of effort, and Gufei's strength was just too weak. There was only so much he could do to help, so Oathless Sword wasted quite a lot of time before managing to climb back up. Exhaling his exhaustion, he turned around to shout, "Come on over." It's very well made, there won't be any complications. Chapter 280, The miserable War Without Wounds. The sight of Oathless Sword successfully worming his way across the single rope bridge gave plenty of the men watching courage, since his armor and size were similar to War Without Wounds. No one was worried that the rope bridge could not take their weight any longer, and the only hurdle they had to overcome was their fear of the act of crossing itself. Stop looking down, just move faster if you're afraid. This is just a game, after all. It's really very easy. Come on over quickly. Oathless Sword encouraged the person currently making his way across the rope. You're almost here. Just a meter more. Once the man reached the other end, Oathless Sword, who possessed strength far greater than Goofy's, easily lifted the man up. Damn, you're so noisy. The man whom Oathless Sword had helped up was young Master Han. He absent-mindedly dug his ears before joining Goofy by the side of the mountain path. Players began to worm their way across the crevasse one by one. Oathless Sword was being very attentive to all the details, constantly checking the condition of the rope Goofy had tied up to see if it had come loose before returning to the ledge to pull up each player who had crossed the bridge. The players behind him slowly accumulated and eventually became quite the hindrance. Oathless Sword shooed these players with his hand. Continue onward without me. Goofy was about to join this newly formed team when he saw young Master Han staying put. Aren't we going with them? I'm staying to watch. Young Master Han turned his gaze on the rope. Not one player has fallen after all this time. Ugh, you're really despicable, Goofy criticized young Master Han even as he folded his arms and stood by the side to observe the players crossing the bridge as well. Oathless Sword could not admonish the two men who had decided to stay behind just to watch the whole procession, since they were not from his guild. Crossing the single rope bridge was more perilous than the wooden bridge. However, it was precisely because of this that the players were more cautious as well. It was not hard to do this in a game, so no one fell down into the abyss, with everyone being extra careful. After all, it was only War Without Wounds' wild actions that had led to that unfortunate situation before. As such, while some players had fallen off the wooden bridge due to their negligence, none had fallen down the single rope bridge thus far, albeit the time these players took to cross the bridge was much slower compared to before. Many players managed to cross the rope bridge until only the members of Young Master's elite were left. Actually, there were also those players who had given up crossing the single rope bridge and were currently standing by the cliff's rock face. The Amethyst Rebirth ladies also paused for quite some time when they got to the rope bridge. This test of courage was tougher than the previous one, so even persuasive words like "it's only a game and you'll be fine" were not enough to ease their sense of dread. This was not a television series where words of encouragement could easily allow the ladies to overcome their fear. After all, "It's really fine, Grape. Just look at how I do it." Grape, whom Royal Godcall was very fond of, was extremely afraid of crossing the single rope bridge. Incessantly shaking her head, she refused to cross the bridge no matter how hard Royal Godcall persuaded her. Finally, he decided to use himself as an example. Grabbing onto the rope, he nimbly made his way over to the other side. He did everything he could to show how easy it was to cross the rope bridge, even throwing an encouraging smile to Grape time and time again. "See, it's really easy. Come on, it's your turn now, Grape." Royal Godcall shouted from the other side of the crevasse once he made his way across. Grape timidly looked around her. The Amethyst Rebirth ladies that were unafraid of heights had long made their way across, and those that remained did not find the least bit of courage in Royal Godcall's display. They looked at one another before deciding that they had far more in common with those players standing by the cliff's rock face. Oathless Sword, who was still standing by the edge of the crevasse, asked aloud, "Is there anyone else coming over?" The players on the other side looked at one another. Those of Young Master's elite who had made it across felt rather stunned when they realized that War Without Wounds had yet to make it to their side. Looking across, they could see him visibly hesitating. "You better get your goddamn ass over here. Don't you dare drag us down." This was actually the first time their mercenary group leader, young Master Han, had publicly expressed his anger. He even tossed the unfinished bottle of liquor in his hand toward the cowardly crowd on the other end in his fury. Luckily, no one got struck by it, and the bottle shattered into pieces upon contact to the ground, spilling its content on the mountain path. "Is there anyone else wishing to cross the bridge? Please do so immediately." War Without Wounds looked around him. "Fuck, you're the one I'm referring to. Stop acting and get over here already." Young Master Han took another bottle from his dimensional pocket to toss over, but when he saw that the bottle was still full, he could not bring himself to do so. Quickly unscrewing the cap, he drank as much as he could. This. War Without Wounds stuttered. It's fine, wounds bro. I even made it across, so why wouldn't you? Oathless Sword smiled. War Without Wounds saw that Oathless Sword was not lying since the latter had the same size as himself. There should be no reason for him to not make it across if the man could. It was not as if War Without Wounds had acrophobia, either. He was mainly worried about his heavy weight, especially after his previous harrowing escape from death at the wooden bridge. Simply put, he did not feel safe doing this. Come on over quickly. Young Master Han bellowed. It's gonna be fine. This bridge is really well made compared to that wooden bridge from before. Oathless Sword assured him. He had apparently heard of War Without Wounds' experience hanging onto the fallen wooden bridge like a dry sausage. With one man coaxing while another berating, War Without Wounds tightly held the rope and shouted, "I'm coming over now." With that, he leapt off the edge. Everyone applauded War Without Wounds' courage as Royal God Call shouted, "Motherfucking Wounds, you better drop down and die." Sadly, his jeering did not work. War Without Wounds carefully shifted himself across the rope bridge. He was quite possibly the most attentive out of everyone there at crossing the bridge, and he slowly but surely advanced forward with measured and precise movement. A solemn expression was carved into his face as if he were a boss in game. Everyone was entranced by his attempt. They were thinking of how enjoyable it would be to see War Without Wounds drop down despite him treating the matter with graveness. No one knew if it was the crowd's unified thought that had made it happen, but when War Without Wounds was about 2/3 of the bridge, everyone heard and saw the rope snapping in two. He dropped. Everyone exclaimed in a voice that betrayed their glee over his misfortune. Motherfucker. War Without Wounds' voice was drowned by the wind, echoing as he fell. Due to the lack of anything exciting happening further down the mountain path, many of the players immediately messaged one another when they heard the snapping sound of the rope reverberate through the ridge. What happened? It was then that a feeble moan was heard from down the crevasse. Quickly pull me up. Fuck, he's not fallen into the abyss. He's actually still hanging there. Royal God Call exclaimed. He lay prone by the edge of the crevasse and poked his neck out. War Without Wounds was holding on to the rope for dear life. Just let go of the rope. Royal God Call advised. You just wait, Royal, I'm gonna hurl you down this crevasse once I get up there. War Without Wounds raged. How arrogant. Royal God Call pulled out an arrow and was about to knock it. Quickly call me Grandpa Royal. Alright, settle down, you two. Goofy pulled Royal God Call to the side as he waved to a few players around him. Hurry and pull that man up here. Hold on tight, Wounds. Brother Assist shouted. Through the combined efforts of a few men, War Without Wounds was hoisted up to solid ground. He lay there looking at the boundless sky above him with a face covered in bruises. His armor got dented from its impact against the crevasse's rock face. Young Master Han bestowed heal on him. How are you? Fine, I think. War Without Wounds was breathless, not from exhaustion but from anxiety. His close encounter with death today had taken a toll on him that was not visible to the naked eye. Alright, you've definitely worked the hardest during this stretch, so I'm sure you've earned quite a lot of points. Young Master Han consoled as he gestured at Sword Demon. Yup. Sword Demon affirmed this. Taking out a little booklet, he diligently recorded, mental reimbursement. 20 points. War Without Wounds was only able to stand up after quite some time. Royal God Call had the foresight to make himself scarce from him. War Without Wounds seemed to have been enlightened by something as he did not bother to pursue his quarrel with Royal God Call and merely asked, will there be any more bridges ahead? It doesn't seem to be the case, Oathless Sword smilingly replied, adding, my brothers ahead have yet to encounter another. Oh. War Without Wounds answered as he waved his arm. All right, everyone, let's go. There were indeed no more crevasses ahead as the group continued forward. The mercenary groups and traversing forces did a head count. Quite a lot of players abandoned this expedition due to the bridge crossing. This was especially true for a large number of the female players, a fact that greatly pained many male players. No more abnormalities cropped up for quite a while. Just as they were about to complete their trek through the Oolong mountain range, unrest spread from the front of the group. War Without Wounds trembled. Did we encounter another eroded path? No. We've encountered enemies, young Master Han replied. TSK. What's so scary about that? War Without Wound's back straightened when he heard this. It's quite troublesome to engage enemies here. This narrow mountain path makes it impossible for men to get into formation. Many players are feeling helpless due to this fact. Look at all these mercenaries stuck behind. There's just no way for us to lend a hand here. Brother Assist explained. How are we going to help when we don't even know what's going on? Royal Godcall jumped up and down, trying to catch a glimpse of what was happening ahead of them. What's the situation? Everyone asked young Master Han. The monsters that have spawned are blocking the mountain path, so we can't continue forward, young Master Han informed them. What's the monster type? Mountain bandits. What's so scary about them? Everyone scoffed. There's a boss leading them, young Master Han answered. They could feel their hearts tighten at that. According to the game officials, monsters that fought alongside their boss would have higher combat strength, and they would prioritize the commands of the boss beyond anything else. Although the boss's intelligence and resourcefulness were not greater than players, the boss's commands could ignore the threats on the monsters. Hence, the methods players would employ to pull these monsters depended entirely on the boss. Even if a player killed the monsters, the aggro from the remaining monsters might not even be drawn appropriately if they were obeying the boss's commands. The only flaw to this unquestionable discipline these monsters possessed depended entirely on the quality of the boss's intelligence. So what's the situation right now? They asked young Master Han. Our men have retreated for now and are currently reorganizing themselves for the next assault, young Master Han replied. Looks like it's time for us experts to shine. That is precisely why we are currently being called to the front line. Young Master Han affirmed.